They fired me for being just a nurse in my scrubs in a boardroom that smelled like money and citrus, and I walked out holding a cardboard box and my pride like they were both fragile glass. 9 years later, I became chief of surgery at the very same hospital system, white coat, steady hands, a window that stared down the bay, and the new board chair walked into my office like the past had never happened. He looked right at me, said Dr. Rivera, like it was our first hello, and all I could think was, yeah, that happened. I kept my face calm, you know what I mean. He gave me a speech about outcomes and innovation numbers that glitter for donors, and then my son Leo popped in with his sneakers squeaking, and that fearless hello, I love, stuck out his hand, and the room tilted, because Beckett Hale, the man who once cut me out of his life, was staring at a 9-year-old with his eyes. I didn't smile like a movie villain. I didn't throw it in his face. I let the silence do the math. Leo left for school, the door clicked, and Beckett stood there like someone had whispered a secret he didn't know how to hold. 3 days later, he came back with no appointment, tie. A little crooked breath, a little short, and asked the question he'd been circling. Were you Isla Reyes, like the name might set off a fire alarm? Hello, Beckett, I said. Not unkind, just tired of ghosts. He sat down like the floor had moved, looked around at the diplomas and the city, and the quiet proof of what I'd built. You're a surgeon. Chief of surgery. And I nodded because truth doesn't need volume. Then the question he couldn't finish, it hung between us like heavy weather. Is Leo? I told him the outline, no drama, no edits. You fired your wife for optics. I found out I was pregnant after the papers. I raised him. I worked. I studied. I bled in all the ways that don't show on clothes. And this is the life I made. He covered his mouth, eyes soft with something I'd never seen on him, and he asked to meet his son properly. I gave him one chance with rules that were not negotiable. You show up when you say you will. You never make my kid feel like he has to audition for your name, and if you hurt him, we're done. We told Leo together in my office, blinds half open, the city moving like a second hand behind us. Leo listened. The way he listens to science, chin forward, hands still asked if his dad was going to stay, or just visit like a commercial, and Beckett said he would stay. His voice cracked on the promise, but it landed. The first weeks were clumsy, then less so. Soccer games with a folding chair he couldn't close, ice cream stains on nice shirts, awkward hellos that turned into goodbyes with real hugs, questions about volcano projects and heart pumps, and why the dog only listens to Leo. Somewhere in there, the storm arrived, because it always arrives when people whose houses are made of glass smell a headline. His grandmother Vivian sat him down in a room where the furniture had better manners than most humans, and told him to handle the complication quietly, the child without the name, the past without the light. He told her the boy has a name, Leo, and he wasn't going to hide him. The petition to remove Beckett as CEO came dressed in legal words that sounded like a sermon moral optics brand, alignment, fiduciary duty, and let's be honest, it was about power. It was about shutting a door that someone like me had dared to wedge with a shoulder and a stethoscope. A columnist bit, the story splashed, and suddenly strangers had opinions about my credentials and my kid like we were candidates in a race no one asked us to run. The hospital's PR team called a meeting with a table long enough to land a small plane, politely suggested I take a leave while the news cycle moved on. Perception matters, they said, and I said, I cut open chests to save lives. I don't take days off because someone else can't handle a woman taking up space. They shifted in their chairs, and that's when Beckett walked in, not the polished heir, the other man, the one who had figured out that values are louder than rumors. He said I wasn't stepping back, that my outcomes were the best in 3 states, that if they pushed me out to clean up a mess that belonged to him, he would hold a press conference about what Meridian thinks a woman's worth is worth. The room found religion in the silence. Life kept moving because it always does. The school called Leo fell at recess, head bump alert, and Krabby wanted both parents at the ER. His CT was clean, his patience was not. And in the parking garage where concrete turns voices to gravel, Beckett told me the board vote was set for morning. He said if he lost his title and his money and all that family shine but kept Thursday night dinner at my table when Leo had a headache and needed both parents within shouting distance, he'd call that a win. I didn't clap, I just told him he could sleep on the couch that night, because the kid would rest better with his chaton snoring in the other room. And he said he doesn't snore. And yeah, we both laughed. The science fair hit like a small miracle in a gym that hummed like bees. Leo's heart model pushed fake blood through clear tubing. He explained preload and afterload to a judge who suddenly remembered why he loved teaching kids. And when Leo won his category, he yelled, "Can we celebrate like a real family?" And we ate spaghetti and too much bread. And he blindsided us with the question children always ask, when they're braver than the adults, do you love each other? Beckett said yes. I said love doesn't fix broken pipes. It helps you call the plumber, and we left it there honest and incomplete. The next morning he walked into a boardroom armed with a suit and the decision to tell the truth. They threw reputation and investors and legacy at him like knives, and he said we are a healthcare company. If we punish a child to keep a ledger clean, we have no mission. If compassion is a liability, we should fail, and it wasn't a movie speech. It was better, it was simple and true. I walked in at the end, still in scrubs that smelled like coffee, and Betadine said, what needed saying about merit and ethics and how small it is to hide a child, because grown-ups don't like messy stories. Vivian called me presumptuous. I told her I was busy, and she was in the way. And then there was a vote 7-5, and air came back into a building that had been holding its breath. That night we didn't toast, we did dishes, and he stood in my doorway like a boy after practice and said, "Thank you for being braver than me for longer." And I told him I did what mothers do, and he did what men like him say they can't. We didn't rush a fairy tale. We chose boring on purpose, tacos on Thursdays, trail walks on Sundays, bleachers and sunscreen, and him learning to knock before he barrels through a kitchen where someone is mixing batter and answering math questions. At the same time, Leo kept being Leo. Wise and messy and big-hearted, asked if Grandpa's club could tell him not to wear his Seahawks hat. I said, wear it unless the rule is for everyone, dignity travels with you. Asked if Dad would be sad if he lost all his money. I said probably for a while, then he'll learn the picture still makes sense. Vivian showed up at a game and sat 3 rows up like a queen in exile. Leo scored, ran to her without a grudge. In his body, high-fived a woman who didn't know what to do with grace, that small and that loud. And Beckett whispered, should I have stopped him? I said no. Learn from him. We might marry someday, we might not. We date like adults, slow, public, earned, no secrets, no half measures. And the win, if you're still counting, wasn't the boardroom or the headline. It was a note from Leo's teacher saying he advocated for himself kindly. When a classmate repeated a rumor, it was the brochure shot I made. PR swap for the whole OR team. Because nobody opens a chest alone, it was the way the house feels on weeknights now. Quieter, safer, like the floor under us, finally belongs to us. So here's the question I'll hand you, because I don't believe in tidy endings. When a family or a company decides the right thing is inconvenient, who pays to change the decision? The person who broke it, the person who survived it, or the kid who didn't ask for any of it? I think everyone pays something, and the only way it isn't theft is if the payment builds a future where nobody gets called small just so someone else can feel big. Tell me what you think. Was I right to keep Leo out of the Hale spotlight until his father could stand there with both feet? Was Beckett right to throw his job on the fire and call it heat? Was Vivian right about anything at all? Drop your take in the comments. No cheap shots, only real ones. And if you believe family beats optics type, family over status, hit subscribe if you want more stories told by people who won't stay small, who pick the harder right, who learn to use their hands for healing, not hiding.